Mark.
Oh, they shot me! They shot me! They shot me! They shot me!
Gotta get that apron on faster. Cut! Okay, good. Okay, that's gotta be done much faster.
That was so exhilarating, talking with somebody who's 10 times more passionate than you are.
A smile, but not as long. All right? Try one more.
That's why he's so great. He enjoys it. He doesn't put a cap on his own, and he doesn't put a cap on yours.
And that's what makes it a joyous experience as opposed to, you know, like just a job.
You, at least.
The credit belongs to Martin, or this would have been just another model.
He wanted to counter the romantic image of the mafia and show not only what the pull is, but what that decision means. And that was his goal in that movie.
If you touch her again, you're dead!
This is what goes on. This is the dog-eat-dog struggles of these people. Terrifying.
I just know it from what I saw in the streets. And when I saw it, when I lived it, I always said, oh, well, that's the way it should be on film.
When we were in Chicago doing The Color of Money, there was an article in New York Magazine that was an excerpt from the book.
Having dealt with that world to a certain extent, I felt, therefore, I never really wanted to touch upon that world again. But I found that the style of the book was so interesting, and I tried to say, boy, if I can make a film like the style of this book, because what's the point of making another gangster picture?
There have been several books about mob bosses, but it was like getting a hold of a soldier in Napoleon's army. That's who I wanted. I wanted to know how it worked inside. Detail, detail, detail. Everything is detail.
I was interested in the minutiae of how to live as a wise guy. I wanted to get into the frame of mind of a guy who works that way every day.
And you also had the voice of Henry. So much of that book was just his telling the story. And Marty called, and he said, hello? He said, yeah, my name's Marty Scorsese. He said, I'm a film director, a movie director, I think he said. And he said, do you know, and I said, I know who you are. And he said, well, I'm calling you because he said, I just read your book. And he said, I've been looking for this book for years. I said, well, I've been waiting for this phone call all my life. So he said, I want to do it. But he wanted to write it with me, but he couldn't make a deal with me. So I said, don't worry about it. The deal with you is on the phone now. We will make this movie. Don't you worry about anything else.
I mean, all directors will work with writers and sort of make it their own, but I think in particularly the case of Goodfellas, it was so much about the world that he understood that he really wanted to put his sort of stamp on it.
I hadn't put my name on a script since Mean Streets, and I wanted to create an exhilaration of that kind of life.
But he was stuck with somebody who didn't know anything. So he really had to bring me along, I think, as far as film is concerned. And I was a willing pupil because it was fascinating, and he's a great teacher. Now, when you're working with Marty, of course, he already sees the movie. I didn't, but it was all right. He brought me along. You know, I did most of the typing, but he writes longhand. So I would type, and then it would come out, and then he would scratch these little things on it, and we would work on it, and the dialogue would be bounced back and forth between us. So we would develop scene after scene. In this scene, this is what's going to happen. Then we go to this. And he also said, put in the corner, and he would mention a piece of music. I want that music here.
What really was important was the nature of the relationship between the main character and the audience. And that's the experiment with voiceover.
To us, those goody-good people who work shitty jobs for bum paychecks and who took the subway to work every day, worried about their bills, were dead. And they were suckers. They had no balls.
I think it's a wonderful way to tell a story of a film. But so many times I think voiceover is used to patch a little crack in the script, you know, and then it sort of doesn't work. You need a body of material so that you have enough richness of character to be able to justify the voiceover.
Because the narrative of that part is not important. It's the language. It's the web that he's spinning as a personality. He's getting you to like him. And that's the danger of the character.
The other thing we did was a straight chronology. And that's the way the first draft is written. And then Marty was looking at it and said, you know, it's a little slow. We have to do, this is a movie. We got to do something, got to hook them. He loved the idea, always loved the idea of these guys driving around with a guy they think is dead in the back of the car that's still alive.
Because the moment of that Billy Batts murder is where everything changes for them. And so rather than going from the young boy directly to the ending, the rise and fall, which is just very traditional rise and fall. but we wanted to give it something extra.
So we took that out of the middle of the book, put it in the front. And he says, when they kill him, and then they put the trunk down, then I'll freeze on Ray Liotta looking out, and then bam, you're in the movie.
Marty was lucky in this case. He got to just pick the person that was right for the
trailers.
role.
Visita mi
Bob
canal.
and Joe Pesci were sort of obvious from the start. And Ray just had the qualities. He was believable.
Goodfellas was my fourth movie. I'd heard about the book. I picked it up just by accident one day, just to have something to read from New Jersey to LA. Read it, really liked it. Heard they were going to make the movie, and I met Marty, and I would meet him every now and then, but it was a long, long process. It was extremely nerve-wracking. And then maybe 8 or 9 months later, I finally landed it.
Henry's character is somebody who is grows up with these guys and is very much a part of them, but he's slightly outside of it. And that was part of the quality that Ray has always had. That's why I think he was so perfectly cast. You would never have bought the Bob De Niro character or the Joe Pesci character doing it, but you did buy Ray's character doing it.
You need Henry, you don't need me, right?
He asked me to come and meet him, and then he asked me to come up and read with Ray.
Just right from the beginning, you know, I trusted her, she trusted me, and we were kind of like, you know, the new kids on the block.
And Marty, he always called us the kids, Ray and I. Bring the kids out. You know, it was always very cute.
Now think about it. It's going to cost you, Hill. It's going to cost you a lot.
So we had a commitment towards each other and something that we were both going through at the same time, a newness to the situation.
Watch this suit, watch this suit, you little frick.
Frank Vincent is like part of the team. You know, he's been in other movies, and he's been in movies since.
And when I came in to meet with him for this, he said, what do you want to play? And I said, I want to play Paul. He said, don't play Paul. Play Billy Bats. You don't argue with Marty. You say, no, I want to play this. If he says to play, he says, listen to me, play Billy Bats. I said, okay, Marty, whatever you want to do. And that's how it was cast. At that moment, I did not know what Billy Bats was going to be. So it actually was really a gift, because everybody I know that I ever see or meet knows about it. And I did 40 movies. So that's got to be the standout. Savino. He was perfect for Paul. I wasn't.
That I didn't think I could do it, because it was not the kind of role that I felt I really had an affinity for. The externals were easy, a middle-aged Italian man. The difficulty was in the lethality that I felt I didn't possess. And so even though I wanted to do it, I was sort of faking when I went to the meeting and giving Martin the impression that I knew exactly what to do with it when I had no idea what to do with it. But I wanted so much to be in a Scorsese movie. I guess he just figured I was capable of it.
I had done so much homework. I was just obsessed with it. I knew it front, you know, I remember I was at home in Jersey. Nick Pileggi had tapes of Henry. I remember putting the cassettes in my mother's car, and as I would drive to New York, I'd be listening to him tell his story as he chomped on potato chips. And my dad would say, stop studying, get out and do something. I knew it was a great opportunity, and I did not want to be a week or so into it. And, you know, Marty says, you know, come to the trailer. I don't know if this is where. I just really wanted to play make-believe with these guys. And, you know, again, I didn't want to mess up.
I believed I could be Karen and do Karen justice.
You are nothing but a whore!
Mr. Superintendent! I knew the motivation of jealousy and wanting to hold on to her man, and I understood those things.
Keep coming.
See, Jimmy was one of the most feared guys in the city.
The author, Nick Pileggi, had a lot of information, research material that he had discarded from the book, and I also would talk to people who I thought would have some connection or some relevance to this particular character.
Well, he wanted to talk to me about the Jimmy Conway character, so, you know, I mean, there was some mornings that we talked 4 or 5 times. He'd be in his trailer before he'd go in front of the camera, you know, get me on the phone, and...
He would call you 4 or 5 times a day?
You know, in the mornings before he would...
Wow.
You know, how does Jimmy hold a cigarette? How do you think he reacted, you know, when he seen Johnny Roast Beef, you know, pull up with the Cadillac, and how he held a shot glass, you know, what kind of a face he made. I mean, all of these crazy, you know, I mean, I thought they were crazy questions at the time. But, you know, and I started to get the hang of it, and, you know, I knew what he was requesting, and, you know, and I was able to, you know, participate, you know, and it It was rewarding, and I got paid for it.
And it was about 2 months in preparation to try to get this quality that I knew it called for. I was kind of agonizing over it for a couple of months. I was thinking, I'm going to ruin this movie. I was looking for something to get out of it. Till 2 days before we started production, by virtue of constantly searching to find where that kind of quality that killers have. I was preparing to go out one night, passed by the mirror to check for spinach in the teeth, and I jumped back. I literally frightened myself. I saw a look in my eyes that frightened me. And who was that? I said, that's Paulie. And once I found it, the role became just a duck in water. It just was so easy to do.
That what Paulie and the organization does is offer protection for people who can't go to the cops. That's it. That's all it is. They're like the police department for wise guys.
So much of what Scorsese does is in the way he directs. And so you see something entirely different up on the screen often than is in that script.
If I felt the scene could be opened up, I usually did that with the actors in rehearsal.
So we would rehearse 35, 40 minutes a scene, and they were all improvisations. They were very loosely around the script, just sort of what was happening, not improvising by writing lines. I mean improvising behaviorally.
He always says, don't act like these people, behave like them.
You know me, I would like to help you out. I hope so.
Sonny, tell him what we talked about.
He gave me fabulous direction for Karen. He said she's the movie star. She's the star, of Henry's life.
He knows so well what actors need and how to help them.
And then he'll see something he likes, and he'll come over and say, you know what you said in that other improvisation? Why don't you say that to him again? Or let him have it.
Now go home and get your fucking shine box.
Motherfucking mutt! You fucking piece of shit!
He uses the power of the verb. Acting is doing something. I threaten, I charm, I beg. And what Martin does in the improvisation is encourage the doing of things. Well, that merely means stay with the other fellow and deal with what he's giving you.
Why, what are you, stupid? What's the matter with you?
I apologize.
What's the matter with you?
Sorry.
The fuck is the matter with you?
You feel like you're a real collaborator. He makes you feel that way, and in a certain sense you are, because you're giving all the good things that you have. And you see anybody fucking around with this shit, you're going to tell me, right?
Yeah.
That means anybody.
He knows what he wants to do, but you really feel like you're creating and he's letting you go to do what you've come up with.
That's just the way he is. He's very open to a lot of ideas from anybody.
That was, for an actor, it was like the jackpot.
So even during the improv, once we had the improv down, then we had to lock it.
You don't improvise on camera when we're shooting. They all think that Marty just doesn't do anything, that he lets the actor say, okay, go ahead, and he sits there like this, and enjoys it. It's not true. I mean, it's so crazy to think that you can go in there and make a movie like that. It has to be structured. You're still saying a script.
I said, all right, I'll tell you something. Go fuck your mother.
Probably the most memorable improvisation I've ever seen was the Joe Pesci Ray Liotta improvisation at the nightclub.
I'm funny how? I mean, funny like I'm a clown, I amuse you?
Which is something that actually happened to Joe years ago, in reality.
And so Marty said, oh, well, we must put that in the film.
I make you laugh. I'm here to fucking amuse you.
And that was very carefully worked on. Within our rehearsal period, I was able, as the co-writer, to record several takes, maybe 4 to 5 takes between Ray and Joe of this dialogue. I then took that and rewrote that, which was then inserted into the script.
Funny how? I mean, what's funny about it?
It was interesting how he shot that sequence. He's shooting it in a medium shot, not in a close-up. And the reason, I always tell film students this, that it's very important, is that, first of all, he knew the scene was powerful enough that he did not need close-ups. And secondly, what he really wanted to show was how the people around Joe Pesci and Ray Liotta were gradually changing the looks on their face as the sense of dread began to creep into what was supposed to be a casual conversation, and suddenly it is wonderful how you see their faces change, and he was very adamant that that's how he wanted to shoot it.
Hello, Anthony. He's a big boy. He knows what he said. What'd you say? Right. Funny how?
And you just watch his body language, and you know it's dead serious, and it could turn on a split second. But hard to cut.
Marty and I spent a long time figuring out how long to wait until